Welcome to the deep dive. We grab a whole stack of interesting info and, well, really get into it.
That's the plan.
And today, we're wading into the wonderfully weird world of Canada's craziest laws.
Oh, yeah. Quite a landscape, isn't it? Some things that make you just stop and think. "Ooh."
Exactly, and stories that, kind of blur that line between what's actually a law and what's just a story.
Right. So we've gathered our sources, and they definitely paint a picture of legal oddities. Some are bizarre, but some, surprisingly, have uh, pretty solid reasons behind them.
So our mission today is to sort of navigate this maze, the regulations, the rumors, get into the why. What does it all tell us about Canada?
hmm Because the legal system itself is so well layered.
It really is. You've got British common law as a base.
But then Quebec's distinct French civil law system.
Right. And then federal laws, provincial laws piled on top.
Plus, Canada's is just huge and diverse geographically, culturally.
So it kind of makes sense that you'd end up with some, let's say, unique rules.
And maybe even more unique stories about rules.
And for sure. So we've picked 5 specific examples to really dig into. We want to find out where they came from, are they actually legit, and what's their cultural impact, if any.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's kick things off with a rather colorful tale from Ontario, Petrolia specifically.
Ah, the legend of the pink shirt Sunday ban.
Yes. The rumor is you just cannot wear a pink shirt on a Sunday in Petrolia.
Like there are fines involved?
That's the story. Fines for rocking pink on the Lord's Day.
Okay, so the backstory they usually tell, it points to like early 20th century small town Canada. Yeah.
Exactly. Deeply traditional, probably Protestant values. Sunday was for, rest, church.
And bright colors like pink were maybe seen as inappropriate, too
Yeah.
loud.
Disrespectful, maybe?
Oh,
Undermining the decorum of the day.
and the idea is just stayed on the books, like bureaucratic inertia.
That's the theory sometimes floated. But what's interesting is how plausible it sounds, at least initially.
Well, yeah. There definitely were strong social norms back then, especially about Sunday behavior in many places. Dress codes weren't unheard of.
So a very specific color ban doesn't feel completely out of left field on the surface.
But then you actually try to find the law.
And poof, it vanishes.
Mm-hmm.
Our research shows absolutely zero official record.
Nothing in Petrolia's own municipal archives.
Nope. And nothing in the Ontario Provincial Archives either.
And didn't the CBC look into this a few years back?
They did. Part of a bigger look at quirky Canadian law myths. Their conclusion, total urban legend.
So how does something like that even start? Any theories?
Well, several possibilities. Could have been just local humor,
Mm.
an inside joke that got out.
Or maybe an anecdote that got wildly exaggerated over time.
That happens. And then there's the internet effect.
Ah, yes. Reddit often gets mentioned, doesn't it? Maybe amplifying it, maybe as a prank.
Could be. It's even become a bit of a tourist thing now, which is kind of funny.
Really? How so?
Apparently, some local shops actually sell pink shirts, sort of playing along with the myth, a wink to the supposed ban.
Huh. So no legal basis, but the story itself is definitely alive and well.
Totally. And culturally, it says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really shows how powerful storytelling is for a community's identity.
Even a totally made-up law can become part of the local lore.
A bit of shared fun maybe even draws people in. It's fascinating how folklore and a place's image can get tangled up like that.
Absolutely. Okay, so from a fictional fashion faux pas, let's shift to something very real and maybe even weirder out west.
All right, Alberta and the province-wide ban on pet rats.
Yes, not hamsters, not gerbils, rats. In Alberta, you cannot legally own, breed, or sell a pet rat.
And the penalties are serious.
They are. This isn't some forgotten old rule. It's active legislation.
And it's a very clear history, right? Goes back to the 1950s.
1950, exactly. Under the Alberta Agricultural Pests Act, it was a key part of their huge rat control program.
Which was, like, unbelievably successful.
Yeah. Astonishingly so. The deal was Norway rats, super invasive, were a massive danger to Alberta's grain industry back then.
Huge economic threat.
Absolutely. So the province declared war. Poison, traps, border patrols, the works.
And by 1953, they basically wiped out the wild rat population.
Incredible achievement, really.
It is. And the pet rat ban is directly tied to maintaining that success.
Right. The logic is simple. Prevent any chance of reintroduction.
Even domesticated rats, if they escaped and started breeding, could potentially bring back the wild populations and threaten agriculture all over again.
So that's the core reason for what seems like a really extreme rule.
And it's enforced.
Yeah.
You mentioned penalties, up to $5,000.
That's the potential max, yeah. And we found sources mentioning a Calgary case from just 2022. Someone got fined $500 for having a pet rat.
Wow. So it definitely happens.
It does. And, it sparks debate. Animal advocates might question banning domesticated pets.
While officials point to the huge agricultural risk they're trying to prevent, it shows how different priorities clash.
Definitely. And it's become, weirdly, a part of Alberta's identity.
Those rat-free signs at the border.
Exactly. You see those on the highway. It's taught in schools, apparently, part of local lore.
And for anyone visiting, it's usually a huge surprise, like, you banned what?
It really underlines how seriously they take protecting their farms. Serious enough to ban a common pet. Okay, let's head back east again. Another driving-related rumor.
Okay, this one takes us to British Columbia, maybe Vancouver specifically. The supposed ban on driving a car covered in sticky tape.
Right. The idea that too much tape on your car could get you a ticket.
Safety concerns, supposedly. Obstructed windows, maybe distracted drivers.
That's the gist. Imagine your duct tape bumper fix landing you in trouble.
Or your tape-based art car project.
Uh-huh. Exactly. The story goes, maybe this cropped up in the 80s, a way to clamp down on really dodgy car mods or repairs.
Yeah, the thinking being that loads of tape could block your view or just signal the car isn't safe. You hear these fuzzy stories. Taped up windows, bumpers.
But, like the pink shirts, when you actually hunt for the specific law,
It's not there. Sources say there's nothing explicit about sticky tape in BC's Motor Vehicle Act.
precisely. What seems way more likely is it's a misunderstanding of broader rules.
Like what?
Like the existing laws that say your windows have to be clear, unobstructed, and your vehicle must be roadworthy.
Ah, okay. So if the tape was blocking your view or holding a crucial part on precariously.
Then that could get you ticketed under those general safety rules. But no specific tape ban.
Makes sense. Didn't Reddit pop up again here, calling it an urban legend?
Yep, a 2021 thread gets mentioned. It's easy to see how maybe a few tickets for genuinely unsafe, heavily taped cars could get twisted into this myth.
Another case of a small truth, maybe, or a misunderstanding just growing into a legend?
It does kind of reflect BC's focus on road safety, though. Makes sense in that context.
True, with the mountains and weather, safety's a big deal there.
And there's probably a bit of a local humor to it, playful exaggeration, and maybe a useful reminder for visitors. Keep your car in decent shape.
Good advice anywhere, really.
Okay, from sticky tape, let's move to something maybe messier.
Are we talking about silly string?
We are indeed. Believe it or not, in some towns, in provinces like Ontario and Nova Scotia, there are actual bylaws restricting silly string in public.
Really? Banning silly string, that feels oddly specific.
It does, kind of kills the party vibe, right?
Yeah.
But there's a practical side.
Cleanup, I'm guessing. Litter.
Exactly. And potential safety issues, too, especially after big public events.
Okay, tell me more. Where does this actually happen?
Well, Oakville, Ontario is a good example. They brought in a bylaw back in 2001. No silly string in parks or streets during festivals and things like that.
Wow, just the mess.
Mess is a big part, all that plastic string litter. But also, it can apparently make surfaces really slippery, so environmental and safety concerns.
And there are fines.
Up to $200 potentially.
And do they actually enforce it? Or is it just on the books?
Oh, it gets enforced. Sources point to a case from 2018. A teenager in Oakville fined $150 during Canada Day celebrations for using silly string.
Wow, okay. So it's real. Anywhere else?
Halifax, Nova Scotia, has similar rules, especially during parades. They had issues with it clogging storm drains.
Right, I can see that being a problem.
So, unlike the pink shirts or the tape, this one is documented. It's real municipal law, actively used, especially around big events.
It really shows that local governments do tackle these kinds of maybe seemingly small public space issues.
Environmental concerns, public safety, even from something like silly string.
For people living there, probably just a minor thing to remember during a festival.
But for visitors, definitely one of those quirky local rules you wouldn't expect.
Good to know if you're planning a parade float, I guess.
Ha! Right. Okay, one last one. And this involves something many of us probably do without even thinking.
Oh, what's that?
Leaving your keys in your car when it's unattended.
Wait, that's illegal.
In several Canadian provinces, yes, it is. Aimed at preventing theft and, ensuring public safety.
Huh. That one is surprising. It feels so commonplace sometimes.
It does. But the logic is sound, right? Don't make it easy for thieves.
True. So this is actual provincial law, like in the Highway Traffic Act.
Exactly. Ontario's Highway Traffic Act has it, BC's Motor Vehicle Act,
Yeah.
examples like that. It's not brand new, but with car thefts being a concern, it gets attention.
The idea is just don't leave it running, don't leave the keys in easy reach.
Pretty much. Discourage opportunistic theft.
And are there actual penalties? Do people get fined for this?
They can, yeah. Fines vary. Maybe around $100 in Ontario, up to $300 in BC, something like that.
Have you seen examples?
Our sources mentioned a Global News report from 2023 Toronto driver fined $150, briefly left keys in an unlocked car while grabbing coffee.
Wow, just for ducking in quickly.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it feels crazy to some people. It's so specific and it's easy to forget in the moment.
Yeah, you just pop out for a second, think nothing of it. But technically, you're breaking the law.
Mm-hmm. It reflects that proactive approach to crime prevention, especially in cities, using regulation to shape behavior.
For locals, I guess it's a reminder, stay vigilant,
Yeah.
lock your car, take your keys,
But for tourists, definitely a potential trap if you're not aware of that rule.
for sure. Okay, so looking back at these five,
Yeah.
quite a mix, isn't it?
Absolutely. Some definite facts, some definite fiction.
The Alberta rap ban, totally real. Very practical reasons.
Silly string restrictions real. Local bylaws addressing cleanup and safety.
Unattended car keys law. Real provincial legislation about crime prevention.
But then the pink shirt Sunday
Seems to be pure myth and urban legend.
and the sticky tape car ban.
Also looking like a myth, probably born from misunderstanding general safety rules.
So why do these things stick around? The real ones and the myths.
Well, the real ones often persist for good reason, right? Practical needs like Alberta's agriculture.
Or they just hang around because nobody bothers to repeal old bylaws, bureaucratic inertia.
Or they address ongoing community concerns like the silly string mess. Or modern problems like car theft.
And the myths. Why do they have such staying power?
They're just entertaining, aren't they? Fun stories to tell.
Yeah, maybe they boost local pride or even attract tourists, like the Petrolia pink shirt thing.
And didn't you mention a study suggesting Canadians actually enjoy sharing these quirky law stories?
Yes, a UBC study found that. It's kind of part of our collective storytelling, it seems, sharing these oddities.
It also really highlights how local governance works in Canada. Provinces and municipalities have a lot of power to make their own rules.
Leads to a lot of diversity and regulations across the country. You mentioned a Canadian Bar Association report.
Yeah, pointing out how many old municipal bylaws are still technically active, even if outdated.
So, zooming out, these laws and legends, they really do give us a peek into Canadian culture and government, don't they?
Definitely. You see history's influence, maybe echoes of old Sabbath rules or those big agricultural protection efforts.
You see how much local rules can vary and matter.
And you absolutely see humor playing a role, especially in how communities share these weird stories.
Well, that's a good reminder. Always check your facts before repeating a wild story.
And Canada's not alone in this, right? Other countries have their own strange laws.
True. Sources mention Australia, Singapore. They have their lists, too.
But apparently, the global view of Canadian laws is often quirky but sensible.
That sounds about right, actually. Quirky, yes, but often with some kind of logic underneath, even if it's historical.
And navigating all this, enforcement is key, isn't it? It probably varies a lot.
For sure. Big city police are likely focused elsewhere, mostly.
Whereas a smaller town might still issue a fine for, say, a bylaw violation like the silly string one.
Right. So for tourists especially, it's maybe worth being a little mindful. Check local rules if you're unsure.
Probably not a bad idea, especially if your vacation plans involve projectile party foam.
Huh. Exactly. Might save you an awkward conversation and a fine. As one source joked, maybe check bylaws before engaging in any form of amusement in Canada.
A bit extreme, maybe, but it makes the point.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear Canada's crazy laws, real or rumored, paint this really vibrant, complex picture of the country.
Yeah, the actual rules often tackle real problems head on.
And the rumors. They show our love for a good story, a bit of local color, maybe a shared chuckle.
It's all part of the identity.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Which one of these oddities surprised you the most?
And maybe what does that surprise tell you about your own assumptions or about the place where you live? Are there similar quirky rules or legends there?
We'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts or experiences. Share them. Let's keep this interesting conversation going.